Get off my property before I call the cops. This is my lake, and you're done here. I froze mid-cast, my fishing line dangling uselessly over the water. The voice sliced through the morning air like nails on a chalkboard. I turned to see a woman stomping down my gravel driveway, her pearl necklace bouncing with each aggressive step, pointing at me like I'd just committed murder. Hi, I'm Marcus Reed, and this is the story of how a Tuesday morning fishing trip turned into a 9-month legal nightmare that nearly destroyed me. Some details have been condensed, some names changed, but the core truth remains. I accidentally discovered I owned an entire lake, and it cost me everything I thought I wanted. Stay with me. Because what started as one entitled HOA president trying to kick me off my own dock ended with me owning hundreds of acres and her wearing an orange jumpsuit. 3 months earlier, I'd bought this cabin as my escape hatch. After 20 years as a criminal defense attorney in Detroit, I was burned out, exhausted, and desperate for silence. The doctors called it severe burnout. I called it my heart trying to escape my chest. I sold the condo, cashed out my partnership equity, and went looking for the quietest place on earth. I found it at Willow Creek Shores, a sleepy lakeside community 2 hours north. The cabin was a foreclosure sale, barely advertised, still packed with the previous owner's belongings. I paid cash, signed the papers, and thought I'd found paradise. That Tuesday started perfect. Dawn light painting, the water gold. Coffee steaming in my mug, my rod already rigged with a crankbait. I was about to make my first cast when the screaming started. The woman was in her mid-50s, blonde hair shellacked into submission, wearing a blazer that probably cost more than my truck. Her face was twisted with fury that seemed way too intense for 7 in the morning. I'm Rebecca Hartwell, president of the Willow Creek HOA, she announced, like she was declaring war. You're violating Community Ordinance 3-7-B. Unauthorized waterfront access. You have 10 minutes to remove yourself. Or I'm involving law enforcement. I felt anger flash hot in my chest. I'd just escaped the chaos of Detroit, and here was another bureaucrat trying to control my life. Ma'am, I said, my voice harder than it should have been. This is my dock, attached to my cabin, that I own. So how about you get off my property before I call the cops on you? Big mistake. Huge. Rebecca's eyes lit up like I'd just handed her ammunition. She whipped out her phone and started recording. Did everyone hear that? He just threatened me. This man just threatened the HOA president on camera. I didn't threaten you. I just... Not relevant. She snapped. Still filming. The HOA controls all aquatic amenities. I don't care what your deed says. The lake access is members only, and your membership application was rejected. I didn't submit a membership application. I said, trying to regain control. I bought property with lake frontage. Denied. She shrieked, switching her phone to dial. I'm calling 911 right now. There's a hostile individual making threats against the community. And she actually did it. Standing on my property. She called emergency services because a 42-year-old man was trying to fish off his own dock on a weekday morning. I watched her pace back and forth, narrating some fantasy about an aggressive intruder and threats to safety. Something cold settled in my chest. That familiar courtroom feeling when I knew I had a fight coming. The deputy arrived 20 minutes later, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. He was young, maybe 27, with that exhausted expression of someone who deals with neighborhood drama constantly. Rebecca practically threw herself at his cruiser before he'd even killed the engine. Officer, thank God. This man threatened me. He's trespassing. He's making verbal threats. Ma'am, Deputy Harris interrupted, reading his name tag as he stepped out. Which gentleman are we discussing? Him. She jabbed her finger toward me like she was identifying a murder suspect. He threatened to have me arrested. He's unstable. Harris walked over, ignoring her frantic gestures. Morning. Sir. You, the property owner. Morning. Officer. Yes, sir. I am closed in February. I handed him the deed I'd grabbed from inside, because old habits die hard. Fishing license is in my wallet if you need it. He examined the paperwork, glanced at my cabin behind me, looked at the dock, clearly attached to my property. Then he turned to Rebecca. Ma'am, this is his house. He's fishing on his own land. This isn't a police matter. It's barely even a civil issue. It's just a man fishing. Rebecca's face turned a shade of red I'd only seen on cartoon thermometers. You don't understand. The HOA passed a resolution. We have exclusive water column rights. I have documentation. She thrust a 3-ring binder at him. Harris didn't even open it. Ma'am, unless you have a court order signed by a judge directing me to remove a homeowner from his property, I suggest you leave before he presses trespassing charges against you. Rebecca stood there, trembling, her phone still recording. Then she did something I didn't expect. Her expression shifted from rage to something else, something that looked almost like hurt. She lowered her phone and spoke quietly, but the microphone caught it. I built this community from nothing, she said, her voice shaking. I saved it once. I can save it again. Then louder, directed at me. You think this is over? You'll be gone within a month, one way or another. She spun around, marched to her white Lexus, and peeled out, spraying gravel across my freshly stained fence. Deputy Harris sighed, tipping his cap. Sorry about that. Mr. Reed. She calls us to 3 times a week, usually about grass height violations. I'd just ignore her. Sure, I said, but I knew I'd already messed up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the confrontation, seeing myself lose my temper, watching her hit that record button. At 3 in the morning, I checked the community Facebook page. The video was already there. Edited. Of course. It started with me saying, "Get off my property," in a tone that sounded way more aggressive than I remembered. The caption read, "New resident threatens HOA president with violence. Is our community safe?" 73 comments. Most of them against me. The next morning proved the video's impact. I woke to find my front door plastered with neon orange violation notices, cease and desist orders, fine notifications for $5,000, unauthorized aquatic resource usage, non-compliant exterior paint color, visual nuisance to community standards. She was hitting me with everything in her made-up rulebook. I walked to my mailbox and found a letter from Hutchins and Gray Legal Group threatening a lien on my property for $55,000 in back dues and damages to community morale. Community morale. I actually would have laughed if my chest hadn't felt so tight. The panic attack started coming back. The tightness in my chest. The feeling like I couldn't breathe. The same symptoms that had driven me out of Detroit. I sat in my cabin that afternoon, head in my hands, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake moving here. But the afternoon brought something that snapped me out of the spiral. I was splitting firewood out back, trying to burn off the anxiety, when I spotted them. 2 men in tactical gear, full security uniforms with utility belts, standing at my property line like sentries. "Can I help you?" I called out, resting my axe against the stump. "HOA Security Patrol." The bigger one grunted, monitoring shoreline access for violations. "You're on my property," I said flatly. Negative. We're positioned on the easement. HOA jurisdiction extends 50 feet from the high water mark. He recited it like he'd memorized a script. Something about those words triggered my lawyer brain. Easement. Jurisdiction. High water mark. Those weren't HOA terms. Those were real legal terms being used incorrectly. I went inside and called my old colleague, Dennis. Den, I need you to look into something. This HOA is acting like they own the air I breathe. Can you dig into the legal filings for Willow Creek Shores? Something feels off. Sure. Marcus. But are you okay? You sound stressed. I'm fine. I lied. Just humor me on this. While Dennis dug into the legal filings, I decided to do some digging myself. Literally. The cabin I'd bought came fully furnished, which meant the attic was crammed with the previous owner's abandoned junk. I'd been avoiding it, but now seemed like the right time. Maybe there were old HOA documents up there. Something that could help. I spent 4 days up there, coughing through dust, sorting boxes of moth-eaten flannel shirts and yellowed magazines. My therapist back in Detroit would have said I was obsessing, using the search as a distraction from my anxiety. She would have been right, but I kept going anyway. I was about to give up when I found it. A heavy steamer trunk shoved deep into the eaves, buried under rotting quilts. I dragged it out, metal hinges screeching. Inside wasn't family photos or antique jewelry. It was documents, stacks of them, yellowed and brittle, smelling like cedar and thyme. There were journals from the 1890s, handwritten ledgers, maps drawn in ink that had faded to brown, and at the very bottom, wrapped in waxed canvas, was something that made my pulse spike. A land patent. Not a deed, but a federal land patent, dated 1874. Granted to a man named Josiah Willow, the original owner of this cabin. I unfolded it carefully on the attic floor. The language was archaic, full of heretofore and witnesseth, but my legal brain kicked into translation mode. It detailed a timber and water rights grant for a specific parcel, but as I read the coordinates, sections, townships, ranges, my heart started hammering. I ran downstairs, grabbed my laptop, pulled up the county GIS mapping system. I started cross-referencing the 1874 coordinates with modern boundaries. Section 12. Section 13. The entire Western Basin. I sat back, staring at the screen in disbelief. If this document was legitimate, and federal land patents were notoriously ironclad, then Josiah Willow didn't just own the 4 acres my cabin sat on. He owned the land under the lake. He owned the shoreline. He owned the forest behind the subdivision. He owned everything. But there had to be a catch. There was always a catch. This was too easy. Too perfect. Real legal victories didn't happen like this. I needed verification. I called Dr. Helena Vasquez, a land historian from the State University. She arrived 2 days later. A compact woman with wire-rimmed glasses and an intensity that was slightly intimidating. Mr. Reed, before I start, I need to set expectations. Federal land patents are legitimate documents, but proving chain of title across 150 years is extraordinarily difficult. And even if valid, adverse possession laws could override them if the land's been openly used for decades. I understand, I said. Just tell me if this is real or if I'm chasing ghosts. She spent 7 hours with the documents, measuring, checking the wax seal with a magnifying glass, muttering to herself. I tried to work on my laptop but couldn't focus. The anxiety was building again. What if this was nothing? What if I'd wasted money I couldn't afford on a fantasy? while she worked. The harassment outside escalated. My neighbor Frank knocked on my door that evening. Frank was a retired plumber in his 60s, a decent guy who kept to himself. But tonight, he looked terrified. He stood on my porch, wouldn't come inside, kept glancing over his shoulder. "Marcus, I gotta tell you something, but I can't be seen here long." "What's wrong?" "Frank. It's Rebecca. She held a closed meeting last night. Board members only. And she paid me." His voice cracked. $5,000 in cash from the reserve fund. Told me I had to sign a statement saying I witnessed you threatening kids at the lake. Said I had to testify you're dangerous. Anger flared hot in my chest. "Frank, you can't." "I know." He was almost crying now. "But my granddaughter Emma, her leukemia treatments got denied by insurance. We needed money for the specialist in Ann Arbor. The copays are killing us. I took it. Marcus, I took the money. But I haven't signed anything yet because you've been nothing but kind. You helped me fix my dock last month. You didn't have to do that." I felt the anger drain away, replaced by something heavier. This wasn't just about me and Rebecca anymore. She was weaponizing people's desperation. "Frank, listen to me. Keep the money. Use it for Emma. She needs it more than Rebecca needs it back. But the statement, don't sign it. But can you do something for me? Can you give me a copy of what she wanted you to sign?" He pulled crumpled pages from his jacket pocket. I read through them. It was complete fiction, painting me as violent, unstable, a threat to children. Legal language drafted by someone who knew exactly how to build a harassment case. "Frank, why is she doing this?" "It's just fishing." "Why does she care so much?" Frank looked at me with wide, exhausted eyes. "You don't know. It's not about fishing. It's the resort deal. She's selling the lake access to Riverside Development Group. They want to build a luxury resort on the North Shore. Your shore. Glamping pods, spa, clubhouse, jet ski rentals. Rebecca gets a massive consulting fee if she can guarantee exclusive commercial access. $500,000? I heard. Maybe more. Everything clicked into focus. The aggression. The 911 call. The desperate escalation. She wasn't protecting the community. You're blocking everything because your property sits right where they need the access road. Frank continued. She needs you gone, Marcus. And she's not going to stop. After Frank left, I sat in my kitchen staring at those forged statements. Rebecca wasn't just some petty tyrant. She was desperate. And desperate people were dangerous. Dr. Vasquez walked out of my living room holding the land patent like it was the Declaration of Independence. "Mr. Reed," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "We need to talk. Good news or bad news? Both. The patent is legitimate. Authenticated wax seal, correct format for 1874. Verified signatures. The grant was made under the Timber Culture Act. But here's where it gets complicated. She spread a modern survey map next to the historical one. The coordinates do cover an extensive area, including most of the current lakebed and surrounding forest. However, there's a problem. She pointed to a section of the document. This signature here, from the county recorder. It's faded badly. A good lawyer could argue it's not clearly legible, which could call the entire document's validity into question. My stomach dropped. So, it's worthless. No, not worthless. But it's not the slam dunk you're hoping for. You'd need to file a quiet title action in court. That means naming every property owner in the subdivision as a defendant. It means months of litigation, expert witnesses, forensic document analysis, And even then, the county could invoke adverse possession, arguing the land's been openly used as a subdivision for 30 years. How much are we talking? Time and money. 6 months minimum. Probably closer to a year. Legal fees, conservatively, $40,000. Maybe $60,000 if it goes to trial. And there's no guarantee you'd win. I sat down hard on my couch. $60,000 I didn't really have. A year of my life. And I might lose anyway. What would you do? Dr. Vasquez. She smiled sadly. I'm a historian, not a gambler. But I will say this. Federal land patents are notoriously difficult to overturn. If you can prove that signature is legitimate, you'd have a very strong case. The question is whether you can survive the fight long enough to win it. After she left, I sat alone in the dark cabin. My chest felt tight again. The familiar panic creeping back in. I'd come here to escape fighting, and now I was staring down the biggest legal battle of my life. One that could bankrupt me and destroy what was left of my mental health. I could just leave. Sell the cabin. Take the loss. Move somewhere else. Somewhere without HOAs or Rebecca's or land patents. The smart thing would be to walk away. But then I thought about Frank, holding that blood money, crying on my porch. I thought about the families who lived here, who had no idea their HOA president was selling them out. And I thought about Rebecca's face when she said, "I can save it again." She actually believed she was the hero of this story. At 3 a.m, I made my decision. I called Dennis. "Marcus, it's 3 a.m. Are you okay? I need you to file a quiet title action tomorrow. I'll explain everything, but I need it filed before Rebecca realizes what's happening. Marcus, do you know how expensive?" "I know. I'm doing it anyway." There was a long pause. "You're insane." "But okay. Send me everything you have." The next 6 weeks were hell. Pure, distilled hell. Dennis filed the quiet title action, naming the HOA, the county, and Riverside Development as defendants. The legal fees started immediately. $5,000 to file, $8,000 for the initial expert consultation, $3,000 for the surveyor. Rebecca's response was immediate and vicious. She hired Crawford and Associates, a firm known for aggressive litigation. They filed a motion to dismiss, arguing the land patent was fraudulent. They demanded forensic analysis of the document, which meant more money. Another $12,000 for a forensic document examiner. The community turned against me almost completely. The edited video Rebecca had posted now had 200 shares. People I'd never met were calling me a con artist, a scammer trying to steal people's homes. My mailbox got egged twice. Someone left a dead fish on my porch. The panic attacks got worse. I wasn't sleeping. Wasn't eating right. I'd lie awake calculating how much money I had left. How long I could sustain this fight. My therapist from Detroit started doing video sessions with me twice a week. She was worried. I was worried. Frank stopped by one afternoon, looking guilty. "Marcus, I'm sorry, but Rebecca's putting pressure on everyone. She's telling people you're going to evict them all. Take their homes. People are scared. My wife Martha, she's been getting phone calls. People yelling at her for me talking to you? It's okay. Frank, I understand. No, it's not okay. But I can't help you right now. I'm sorry. Emma's treatments. They're working. But if I lose the community's support, I don't know what we'll do." After he left, I stood in my cabin, staring at the lake. For the first time since leaving Detroit, I seriously considered giving up. Just walking away. This wasn't worth my health. my savings, my sanity. But that night, Dennis called. Marcus, the forensic report came back. The signature is legitimate. It matches other authenticated documents from the same county recorder in 1874. The examiner found microscopic ink aging patterns consistent with period documents. This thing is real. Marcus, it's actually real. What does that mean for the case? It means we file for a preliminary hearing. We push for a temporary restraining order preventing any development on the land until the title issue is resolved. And Marcus, Crawford and Associates just withdrew as Rebecca's counsel. What? Why? I don't know. But lawyers don't abandon paying clients without a reason. Something scared them off. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks later. Those 3 weeks felt like 3 years. I lost 12 pounds. My hands shook constantly. I started having nightmares about standing in front of a judge and watching him laugh at my land patent. But I also started digging deeper into Rebecca. If I was going to fight, I needed to understand my enemy. I spent hours going through public HOA records, financial statements, meeting minutes. And I found something interesting. The reserve fund was supposed to have $200,000 in it. According to the latest statement, it had $73,000. Where had the rest gone? I cross-referenced Rebecca's financial disclosures with her property records. She'd refinanced her house twice in 3 years. She'd bought a new Lexus with cash. She'd taken 3 trips to Cancun, all on an HOA president's salary of exactly $0. I called Dennis. I think she's been embezzling for years. And I think the resort deal is her way out. She was going to use the consulting fee to replace the money before anyone noticed. Can you prove it? Not yet. But Frank might be able to help. If he's willing. The night before the preliminary hearing, I went to Frank's house. Martha answered the door, her head wrapped in a scarf from the chemo. She looked at me with sad eyes. He's in the garage, she said quietly. He's been crying a lot lately. He feels terrible about all this. I found Frank sitting on a workbench, staring at his hands. Frank, I need your help. Not testimony against me. Testimony against Rebecca. He looked up, eyes red. What do you mean? The money she gave you? It came from the reserve fund. That's embezzlement. But it's not just you. I think she's been doing it for years. I need you to come to the hearing tomorrow and tell the truth. Not about me. About her. About the bribe. About what she's really doing. Marcus, if I do that, the community will destroy me. If you don't do that, Rebecca will destroy the community. She's selling the lake to developers. Frank, she's pocketing $500,000 while everyone's property values tank from construction and commercial traffic. And she's using your granddaughter's cancer to cover it up. Frank was quiet for a long time. Then, what do I have to do, dumb? The preliminary hearing was held at the county courthouse. Not some community center meeting. Real courtroom. Real judge. Real stakes. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Dennis. Rebecca sat at the defendant's table with a new lawyer who looked fresh out of law school and terrified. The gallery was packed. Half the subdivision showed up. I saw Frank in the back row, Martha holding his hand. Judge Catherine Brennan was in her 60s, with steel gray hair and a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. She reviewed the documents for what felt like an hour while everyone sat in silence. Finally, she looked up. Mister, read. This is an extraordinary claim you're making. You're asserting ownership of approximately 800 acres of land currently occupied by dozens of families. Yes, Your Honor. But I want to be clear, I'm not seeking to evict anyone or take their homes. I'm seeking to prevent fraudulent commercial development on land I legally own. Ms. Hartwell, your response. Rebecca stood, composed. Your Honor, this is a clear case of a disgruntled property owner attempting to intimidate the HOA through spurious legal claims. The land patent in question, while possibly authentic as a historical document, has no bearing on modern property rights after decades of adverse possession and open use. Judge Brennan turned to Dennis. Counsel, your rebuttal. Dennis stood. Your Honor, federal land patents are superior to state adverse possession claims. This has been established in multiple federal precedents. But more importantly, we're not here today just about the patent. We're here about fraud. He nodded to me. I stood. Your Honor, I'd like to call Frank Davis to provide testimony relevant to this case. Rebecca's face went pale. Her lawyer started to object, but Judge Brennan held up a hand. I'll allow it. This is a preliminary hearing. I want to understand the full scope of what's happening here. Mr. Davis, please approach. Frank walked to the witness stand like a man walking to his execution. He was sworn in. Dennis began the questioning. Mr. Davis, do you live in Willow Creek Shores? Yes. For 11 years. Do you know the defendant? Rebecca Hartwell. Yes. She's the HOA president. Did Ms. Hartwell approach you recently with a financial offer? Frank's voice shook. Yes. About 7 weeks ago, she gave me $5,000 in cash. What was this payment for? She wanted me to sign a statement saying I witnessed Mr. Reed threatening children at the lake. It wasn't true. She wanted me to lie. The gallery erupted. Judge Brennan banged her gavel. Order. Dennis continued. Mr. Davis, where did Ms. Hartwell say this money came from? The HOA Reserve Fund. And did you accept this money? Yes. Frank was crying now. My granddaughter has leukemia. The insurance denied coverage for her specialist. I was desperate. I took the money, but I never signed the statement. I couldn't do it. Dennis walked back to our table and picked up a binder. Your Honor, these are HOA financial records obtained through public disclosure. They show systematic withdrawals from the reserve fund over 5 years, totaling approximately $130,000, with no corresponding documentation of expenses. I believe Mr. Davis's testimony establishes a pattern of embezzlement and witness tampering. Judge Brennan looked at Rebecca with an expression that could have frozen fire. Ms. Hartwell, I'm going to ask you directly. Have you withdrawn funds from the HOA reserved for personal use? Rebecca stood, her composure cracking. Your Honor, this is a civil property dispute. My financial management of the HOA is not... Answer the question. Ms. Hartwell, I. The reserve fund has been used for community improvements and security measures approved by the board. That's not what I asked. Have you personally benefited from HOA funds? Silence. Judge Brennan closed the binder in front of her. Here's what's going to happen. First, I'm granting Mr. Reed's motion for a temporary restraining order. No development. No sales. No transfers of any land covered by the disputed patent until this matter is fully resolved. Second, I'm referring this matter to the county prosecutor for investigation into potential embezzlement and witness tampering. Third, Ms. Hartwell, you are hereby removed from your position as HOA president effective immediately, and you are prohibited from accessing any HOA funds or documents pending investigation. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. Mr. Reed, I suggest you work with the county on a full forensic audit. This case just became much more complicated. As we filed out of the courtroom, Rebecca pushed past me in the hallway. She stopped, turned back. Up close, she looked older, smaller, defeated. You have no idea what you've done, she whispered. I built that community. I saved it when the developer abandoned it half-finished in 2008. I spent years fixing what they broke, and now you've destroyed everything. You were stealing from your neighbors. Rebecca, you were trying to sell their lake for your personal profit. I was trying to save it. Her voice cracked. The reserve was empty because I used it to keep the lights on when everyone was defaulting on their dues during the recession. I was going to pay it back with the consulting fee. I was going to save everything and no one would have known. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. You should have asked for help instead of lying. People don't help. They judge. You'll learn that 3 weeks later, Sheriff Martinez arrived at Rebecca's house with an arrest warrant. The forensic audit had uncovered nearly $220,000 in embezzled funds over 6 years. Wire fraud, witness tampering, theft from a charitable organization. She was arraigned, posted bail, and then had to surrender her passport. The trial was set for 9 months out, but the story was already over for her. The community knew everything now. The quiet title action took another 5 months. The county eventually settled, agreeing that the patent was valid for the lakebed and shoreline, while individual homeowners retained clear title to their residential lots. Riverside Development withdrew from the project entirely once the criminal investigation became public. I won. Legally. Technically. Completely. I owned 800 acres of prime waterfront property. Dennis estimated I could sell it for $18 million if I wanted to. Retire like a king. Never work again. I had 3 weeks to decide what to do with it. Those 3 weeks were the hardest of my entire life. Harder than the litigation. Harder than the panic attacks. 'Cause now I had to choose who I was going to be. Dennis came out to the cabin one evening. We sat on the dock, beers in hand, watching the sunset. You could sell this, he said. 18 million. Marcus. You could buy an island. You could travel the world. You could do anything. I know. But you're not going to. Are you? I don't know yet. He was quiet for a minute. Can I tell you something? As your friend, not your lawyer. Sure. You left Detroit because you were burned out from fighting. You came here for peace. If you sell this land to developers, you'll have money, but you'll have done exactly what Rebecca tried to do. You'll have become what you were fighting against. And if I don't sell it, if I try to hold on to it all, I'll spend the rest of my life fighting property tax battles and trespassing claims and development pressure. That's not peace either. Then find a third option. I spent nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling. The money was tempting. God, it was tempting. I could pay off my legal fees and still have millions left over. I could be set for life. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Frank crying on my porch. I saw Martha with her cancer scarf. I saw the kids fishing off the public dock. I saw what this place could be if someone didn't turn it into another luxury resort. At 3 a.m. one night, I walked down to the dock. The lake was perfectly still, reflecting stars. I stood there for an hour, just thinking, what would I become if I took the money? The next morning, I called Dennis. I've made my decision. Draft the paperwork for a conservation trust. Marcus, are you sure? This is $18 million. I'm sure. Create the Willow Creek Conservation Trust. Donate the lake bed, shoreline, roads, and common areas to the county with a permanent conservation easement. No commercial development. Ever. Just trees and water and fish. And what do you get? A lifetime tax write-off. And a clause guaranteeing my cabin remains private property, forever exempt from any future HOA. And Dennis, make sure the individual homeowners get clear title to their lots. Fix what the original developers broke. There was a long pause. You're insane. Marcus. You know that, right? Yeah, probably. But I respect it. I'll draft the paperwork. When the announcement went out to the community, the reaction was mixed. Some people were grateful, emotional, thanking me for protecting the lake, but others were angry. A guy named Tyler cornered me at the grocery store. You could have sold that land and given us each a cut. We could have all made money, and then the lake would be gone. I said, your kids couldn't fish there anymore. Your grandkids couldn't swim there. It would be private resort property, but we could have been rich. You can't swim in money. Tyler. Not everyone understood. Some people accused me of playing hero for publicity. Some people said I was an idiot for turning down millions. A few people still avoided me, uncomfortable with the whole situation. But most people were just relieved. The lake was safe. Their homes were secure. The nightmare was over. Rebecca went to trial 8 months after her arrest. I attended the sentencing hearing. She'd pled guilty to avoid a longer sentence. The judge gave her 3.5 years in a minimum security facility, restitution of $220,000, probation after release. She looked small in her orange jumpsuit, broken. When they let her out, she didn't look at me. I heard later she was running the prison library. Part of me hoped she'd find some peace in books, the way I'd found it on the water. The HOA dissolved completely. We formed a voluntary community council instead. Frank became the head of it. Emma's in remission now. She comes fishing with Frank every Sunday morning. She waves at me from down the shore. I wave back. The legal fees totaled $67,000 when everything was said and done. The tax write-off will cover it eventually, but it still stings. And my mental health took a beating. I spent 6 months in therapy, twice a week, working through the anxiety and panic attacks. My therapist said I went through trauma. Maybe I did. Some of my neighbors still keep their distance. The whole situation made people uncomfortable. I get it. I remind them of a weird, dark chapter in the community's history. But sitting here on my dock right now, recording this at sunset, watching the water turn that deep purple, it feels worth it. The lake will never be paved, never be sold, never be ruined. Not in my lifetime. Not in anyone's lifetime. This battle took 9 months, $67,000, and nearly broke me. I didn't get rich. I didn't become famous. I just got to choose what mattered. So what do you think about my case? If you found out you owned your entire neighborhood and could sell it for millions, would you take the money or protect the land? Be honest in the comments. I read them all while waiting for the fish to bite. Sometimes you have to burn the rule book to save what matters. And sometimes the ground you're standing on is worth more than any price tag, if you're willing to pay the real cost of protecting it.